Hello.
Hey.
Hey, so this is once again Biweeklycast, uncertain number 51, or more certain number 51, Biweeklycast 51. Host still the same. I discombobulated myself. Host is still the same. I'm Dima.
I'm Slava, and today it's a book club episode.
Yes, and we are going to take 4 steps to Epiphany, but we may have some stuff before that. Or maybe not.
There is a follow-up, I believe.
Yes, this is a follow-up, and one might think that my discombobulated and hectic start of the episode was intentional. It was not, but it is thematic for our publishing schedule in recent times when we recorded some episodes, but it was my fault. I didn't get to publish them timely. Hereby, I promise to fix that. We have a pipeline of episodes that are going to go out, and I'm promising to do my best to stick to the schedule for the benefit of us and our listeners.
Does it somehow require for people to know the schedule, or you just promised it?
No. I just wanted to unload this to people.
All right, so now you know that whenever we publish the next episode, it is according to the schedule, whatever the schedule is.
Right. I think the last episode that published, it had some references to the date on which it was recorded, and people could compare it to the date when it was published, and it might seem odd. And it was odd, but it is what it is.
Well, as long as it's the same year, that's fine.
Well, yeah, maybe not for all of the episodes, unfortunately.
Definitely not for this one.
Yes, definitely not for this one. But we'll get to that in the end, maybe, sort of, I guess.
So, the book.
The book.
Sev is going through a stage of brainstorming of new potential products, and we think about some alternative services we could try, some experiments. Our R&D team has been working a lot on new assumptions and concepts and things we could potentially do. It's related to a few things. One is that we are considering going to the EU market, and some of our services are not relevant there, like corporate English. Basically, people just don't do that very much. And if they do it with local instructors who speak their language, which makes sense. And the other thing is that the technology is kind of changing and evolving, and we look into the learning segment way more than some traditional face-to-face training that we were doing previously. And probably one of another interesting things is that we believe that the customer habits have changed. Like the way people learn has changed a lot in the past years, and people still do a lot of things by inertia, but we feel that something is changing in the way people learn and study. All this brought us to a big brainstorming meeting where we thought, what should we do about that? What are the product ideas? What can happen there? And intuitively, we started that meeting with analyzing the customers. Like we made the profiles, we talked about their needs, their pain points. And after that discussion, one of our managers, Artem, suggested that we discuss these 4 steps to Epiphany. He sent me the summary that I later shared with you, and he thought that we might take some of the suggestions or tools or things and put them into our product development pipelines as ideas. I had no idea what the book was about, and the only chance for me to read it or to listen to it was to take it to Biweekly Book Club episode, because I think,
interesting,
apart from some fiction books, the only way to get a business book into my head this year is through our book club. And here we are.
Oh, this is interesting. I'm surprised a little bit that you haven't heard of this book previously, because there was a time that it was considered, and maybe still considered, a Bible for startups. Like you would not be a credible startup owner if you haven't read this book. It was definitely up there and like had a big mind share in, I think, late 2000s, early 2010s.
I was lucky not to know that, and I go through our startup phase without knowing that I had to read it.
That's fair. That's fair.
But then I told you that probably I will not listen to the audiobook itself because it's 7 hours or something along those lines.
Yes.
On 1.5 speed, it's 6 hours, but still like quite long. I knew that my weeks are going to be tough, so I thought like, just the summary.
Mm-hmm.
And the day I decided to listen to the summary, the video was deleted from YouTube, and there was no summary.
It was a sign. Yeah.
So I thought, all right, I'll give it a try. So I went to Audible and got the full audiobook. I managed to survive through the first chapter. And then when chapter 2 started, I was like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And the main narrative, which basically describes my entire listening experience, is that I love the idea and I hate the style. So I think the idea of being focusing on the customer needs and behaviors is super nice. But the way this guy wrote it and described it and gave examples and like everything about the style of, I don't know, narrating and writing was so frustrating that I felt that I was torturing myself.
Interesting. We can dig into that. I can relate to the fact that it's not the best book for audio. Because of narration, I think in Audible reviews, it also, like, many people say that narration isn't great. I'm not sure I picked that up, but it's definitely not the book you want to listen to as audiobook. At some point I said, well, I still listened to it, but I then got a kind of copy, like ebook to follow through, because it's not the book in the regular, I'm not sure if it's a regular sense, if it's applicable, if there is a regular sense for a book, but it doesn't have story, right? It's more like a textbook or manual kind of thing, rather than a book with a story, and it makes it extremely difficult to follow when you're listening to it. And B, you do not get as much if you listen to it. It is made to be read with notebook or pen or whatever it might be, to take notes, jot the ideas, and kind of get back, return back to the stuff you just read and connect the dots. So,
have you read it?
I read it back in the day, and this time I decided to refresh my thing with listening. Yeah, it was not necessarily a torture, but it was a little bit helpful for me to recall some of the ideas. But then, like I said, I followed the ebook to get the notes and stuff.
So on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1, please don't read it, 10, you should definitely read it, what would you rate it?
I think it's a solid 8 or 9 for me.
A 9? Oh, gosh.
If someone thinks of starting a new business and wants to kind of, I'm intentionally not saying kind of follow the process, but understand how the sausage is made, I think this is a good kind of manual. It would not be, I don't think, sufficient on its own, but it's a good introduction to whatever it is.
I should definitely reconsider that. Maybe I should try the text version, because in my case it was 6, and I like the CastDev concept that they introduced there. But to me, it's basically a single idea and a few tools how to do that. And then some other management advice and tips and hacks that are totally not related to CastDev, the way you should run your business as the smart startup style. And this thing was frustrating. Like, I know hundreds of businesses that didn't do that and still were successful, but the manner and the style, he was saying, like, no, like, everyone is wrong. Like, this is the way to do startups properly.
Right. Yeah, that was a little bit annoying. But maybe before we dive too deep into the content, let's maybe give a brief overview of the book for our listeners, for those who have not read it or maybe haven't heard about the book. How would you describe it in, like, wanted to say 3 sentences. 3 sentences might be too short, maybe 3 paragraphs or something.
So basically, they're just explaining how product development is wrong. Like, don't develop products from ideas, and that's totally not correct for startups. Mm-hmm. But I think for startups is just polite way to say it's wrong pretty much everywhere. Then, of course, there is the right way to do stuff, and that's customer development. And they suggest these stages, like how you basically go through customer development about defining the discovery, the validation, the creation, and then you build a company, which was probably the least clear section for me. That's how I grasp it. Maybe you got it better because I actually didn't listen to the entire book. That's why I'm not.
That's interesting. My summary would be that this book, the key idea of this book, that in order to have a successful business or to start a new successful business, you need to hit a product market fit, which is opposed to the maybe earlier idea that if you have a good product, it's going to work. You can have a good business. They say that no, having good product is not enough. You need to fit the product to the market. And it describes this customer development process for how you find that product market fit through 4 steps or stages of customer discovery, customer validation, customer creation, and then after that you get to company building.
And that's where I kind of peeped into your notes, and I noticed that you wrote down about the fact that it seems more like sales and marketing book rather than management. And when I speak about product market fit, it's just a very little niche of doing business. In my case, there are 6 services that Savvy provides, and they have quite different product market fits. And the new ones that come, they also have different product market niche. And like this fit is changeable. A business usually has a number of things that they offer, especially if it's a manufacturing company, like so many things they can do and so many target audiences they can tackle with their products, which kind of seems like, there's a marketing specialist who says like, I know how to make products successful, and we will build the entire managerial process around it.
Right. I think I can see how it has that feel, but to me that doesn't sound too alien, if I can be honest, because I've gone through this a little bit with my startup, where you would see that the product itself is not enough. The idea itself is not enough. I think what I sort of like about the idea of product market fit on a philosophical level is kind of this general fluidity or agility of what's going on. It's like with ROI, right? You want to hit particular ROI, and the way how you get there can be at least 2 ways how you get there. You can increase return on the investment, or you can decrease the investment. Like either way, it can work either way, and you have to strike a balance. And I think with product market fit, it introduces similar idea that you may have the greatest product of all time, but if you are not able to sell that product, it's not super helpful. But at the same time, in order to sell something, you might need to deviate from your ideals or North Star or your creative vision to make it practical and usable for people. I think there is a kernel of truth in that, to me at least.
I agree with the concept. Moreover, when you explain it like this, it sounds very reasonable. Mm-hmm. I just couldn't get this message from that section of the book that I managed to go through. And as I was looking through summaries and infographics and reading specific chapters, because when I looked through the content, I thought, I should look deeper into this, and that. I didn't get this feeling. It seemed to me that basically this whole idea is that, okay, let's start from the different perspective. Do you see great difference between traditional businesses and startups?
Maybe yes. Yeah, probably think so. And startup, I think, in the sense that this book, the meaning of the startup in this book is just a new enterprise. It does not necessarily have
definitely.
to be like
So a
high-techy
fresh
and
company,
stuff like
not tech related. Yeah.
right.
And how would you highlight the biggest difference between an established company and the new beginning thing?
I think on the spot, to me, the biggest difference would be that startup hasn't got anything, while established company already has got something. It has either product or manufacturing process or the market or the distribution. It already has something, which means that they would probably not be starting from, it's not the blue ocean kind of thing, but they're not starting from scratch, which puts some constraints on what they can and can't do.
And this is where it kind of goes wrong for me, because I can totally see a lot of even enterprises that are able to innovate and create some new stuff that has never existed. I can see some fresh starting businesses that just copy paste existing business model and do it over and over again, and it's basically just another coffee shop, and like there is nothing special or new about it. And when you open your 12 coffee shop with just a different name and in a different location, doesn't really qualify like a startup. And I think that just the way how old the company or the organization is kind of wrong. And I can see a lot of flexible, agile, and innovative enterprises, like companies of thousands of people that are able to create something new, that are looking for the way they can expand the market. They can train their customers. They can build new habits. They can influence the way things are. Like they can even sometimes invent the way customer experience is going to be before there is a need or there is a niche for that. They create these kind of things, like the theme system journal. Like, yes, there was some kind of journals and planning stuff, but they created an entire system that works specifically for them. Or the one that I don't remember the name, the bullet something.
Bullet journal. Yeah, that's entirely separate thing, right?
It's just like a totally different customer experience. And if they were going through this CusDev section, they probably, the only thing they would feel that something is not working right with all the other ways it's done. But they still get the same basic assumption, like the product development model. We have an idea, we build an MVP, then we try to sell it, and then the way it works. When I think about theme system journal that we both used, it doesn't seem like CusDev. It seems more like product development in its traditional, like we have an assumption, we create an MVP, we try selling it, it sells, we sell more, and then we scale up.
I have thoughts here both about coffee shops and the theme journal. Maybe let's try to unwrap that. I think, like you said previously, when you said like, you know many successful businesses who haven't heard of this book and nonetheless they were successful. I think that holds a lot of truth in it. Like you can do quote unquote right stuff even without having kind of systematic or structural understanding of this is what I'm doing and this is why it's right and that's why I'm doing that. And in the example of theme journal, I would say that probably my estimate would be that those folks, I mean, Mike and Gray, got sort of lucky a little bit in a sense that CusDev happened to them in that particular thing, because I think they started talking about themes way before they invented this theme journal, and through that time they might have seen, like this theme thing is popular with people are interested in that, so they started kind of discovering and then validating the market for like theme related stuff, yearly theme related stuff. And maybe they saw that people try to use different kinds of notebooks to keep track of their themes. They might have done the same thing themselves, and then they put one and one together to get two and said, there is market for this kind of thing, for this kind of product. Let's develop a product. And it just happened so that through the sequence of events, that they sort of maybe subconsciously or unintentionally went through this process, and this is how they've got that product market fit for the theme journal.
I was listening to their podcast quite carefully for a few years, and it doesn't sound like that to me, because I think that they had an idea the way they wanted to be, the way they designed the product for themselves at first. And it also worked with that second notepad, Sidekick notepad, I believe.
Yep.
They were solving their own issue. And then they tested if it's going to actually solve someone else's issue. Then when Mike got to this product development training, I don't quite remember where exactly, he started doing these CusDev activities. They were experimenting with layouts of Sidekick, but they can't find anything there because of the methods that they use. They're trying to find the new need. And it's not there because like the Sidekick notepad by itself is quite a niche thing. And the way they designed it for themselves built a lot of customer experience. Like people who listen to Cortex, they wanted to try it because they trust these guys, not because they have a need of such thing. Like I bought it just because I was buying pretty much anything from Cortex. And it was not because, maybe I should have something on the table that is like, basically such pages were doing the job for me for many years and would be doing the job for many more. But I think that when they switched to CusDev, they stopped innovating. They started adapting and looking for some needs that are already there. And for the first two products, they didn't pay too much attention. They were creating things that they believed in without MVP or validation or a lot of things. Like their first theme system journal went in quite a big issue from the very first try. And they were highlighting how scared they were ordering so many because they had no idea if it's going to be, if there's any demand for that.
There are so many things. Like I think that's great. I think maybe I will ask you afterwards, or maybe if you remember now. Like, do you recall when they shifted to CusDev? Was it like long ago? Because
I think it was right after Mike graduated from that product management thing, maybe a year and a half. I would say a year and a half ago.
Okay, so I think I would have two things in addition to that. Like I kind of maybe missed this shift. And I think that finding different layouts, to me, that would be more in the product development kind of thing rather than customer development. But that's beside the point. I think two points here. I think I might got in a little bit too defensive or too contrarian position where you said like, no, they don't follow CusDev, it doesn't work. And I'm like, no, they're totally following CusDev. And I think I had to backpedal that because one can get product market fit without following this process, or they can get product market fit through different means, which I would sort of think that this what happened at least to initial stuff that Mike and Gray did. There was one other thought related to that. And in general, I think in early startup lore, this was kind of a stick at that time when people said that it's the best thing when you develop a product for yourself because you can understand the customer very, very deeply and intimately, which is not a bad way. I don't think it's not a bad way of doing customer development. It's just, it might not always work, or you might make the mistake of extrapolating or thinking there are too many people exactly like you or something like that. But it's not a bad approach. So that's number one. Number two, it is super interesting what you said about this product management course that Mike did and how they stopped innovating, because recently, in recent weeks, I've been thinking a lot about what is referred to as spreadsheet mentality, where people try to kind of drive development or drive moving forward, drive the progress by setting metrics and stuff like that. And there is this, at least for me, this very visceral notion that not everything that is important can be measured. And if you reduce everything just to measurement and what can be put on spreadsheet, you're missing so much and you will lose your ability to innovate. That's why I'm now so curious about this theme journal thing and shift. May need to re-listen to some of the Cortex episodes.
Because in the first variations or iterations, they just improved some minor things in both journals, and then of course they got the question, what's next? Like what's the next big product that they will add to their portfolio? And they can't, like, they don't have any more needs, like, because they basically fulfilled, they
Right.
created 2 journals that they needed. They got a pen from just friends who make nice pens, and basically that's all set. There's nothing more there. And this is where creativity stops, and then you just take, like, all right, let's go customer validation step by step. And Mike started posting a lot of polls, like, guys, would you do this, or would you do that, and how do you do like this, or would you have a sidekick notepad with days like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or would you have it with weeks, like first week, second week, fourth week, or would you do something like, people don't know because nobody does that. Like, if somebody has a system, they would probably use just blank pages and use something on blank pages,
Right.
just print it for themselves. But then it's a single person experience, and the previous Sidekick Notepad worked because it worked for you and people trusted you and they wanted to try your system. And
Right.
now you just stop suggesting something and you start listening, like, what do you do? And you hear hundreds of thousands of voices saying different things, and there is no more place for creating something solid in such way. Because when, for example, in our case, if we just listen to what customers expect, that's usually very simple and not covering the needs of these customers. They have their expectations, they have their needs, and quite often most of the steps that are described here about customer validation, they are focusing on discovering customer expectations. And
Right.
just some methods, I would say every 6th on these pictures, is actually focusing on looking for why they expect this, like what are the pain points and needs that they have behind these expectations. And it's really easy to switch to just being very reactive and creating what people want instead of creating what people need.
That's true. I keep jotting notes to get to some stuff that makes a lot of sense. I think that in this particular book, the 4th section about company building, it alludes a little bit to this whole idea of then continuing, like when you build a company, how you continue staying relevant and stuff like that. It is difficult to grasp that from just the diagram that I included in our notes, but it has this idea that you want to continue observing. They also refer to authors, or author, Steve Blank refers to this concept from coming from military or something, which is called UDA, which is an abbreviation of, oh my lord, observe something.
Something and adapt.
No. It's observe. Oh my word. It's observe. I'm struggling
Orient,
with.
decide, and act.
Yes, observe, orient, decide, and act, which kind of gets into this kind of thing that you keep looking around, like what's happening and how to adapt to that. But it's too generic. Like it's so easy to throw those acronyms around. There is this element. I don't think this particular book covers that stage of company. So like now that you've established the business, what's next and how you quote unquote get to the next stage. But it is a very, very relevant thing, because when you are already somewhere, it's not the same thing. It's not startup, right? Like you asked me how startup is different. Startup is different, and you have nothing, and then you can go anywhere. But there was one thing I wanted to circle back, if you don't mind, about the coffee shops and that kind of opening the business. I think to me, what would be the difference between, let's say, I open an average coffee shop in a particular location, and what customer development says or can lead to would be that if you follow customer development, instead of opening coffee shop, you could open something else in the same location, which would be more kind of profitable or impactful as a business. So maybe that there is a location that you can open a decent coffee shop, but maybe it's even better location for, I don't know, like bubble tea or whatever. Like I'm trying to come up with something small but small in terms of real estate footprint, but still like noticeably, I don't know, photo printing services is not going to fly in this day and age, but something entirely different. If you observe like what people are doing in that location or something, if you are, let's say, next to some sort of, I don't know, like a governmental building or something like that, you might get more bang for your buck having like copying services or like IT computer printer services, something along those lines. Like you need to look at what are the customers that follow by that particular location and figure out what's the best thing you could do there. And that to me would be the difference between customer development and just rubber stamping coffee shops all over the city.
I think that there is a trap here. And actually, there are two traps. The first trap is that whenever people have an idea of something, they use customer development as a way to rationalize it. Like they believe in coffee shops, then they use all these things and they talk to hipsters who live in that neighborhood. They basically pick a very specific target audience just to validate and prove their concept instead of actually studying and researching what's happening. Secondly, people quite often need and say that they want different things. People who were using the same model that you just described, they were looking for demand. One of the examples, back in Dnipro, if you remember, there was a big wave of opening these beverage places where you could get some beer or something. And they were just opening on exponential, like in every apartment building on the first floor. Like people would keep doing that over and over.
True story.
And they were doing exactly what you were saying. Like they were just going there. They were saying like, like what do you want to buy? What do you buy? How often do you buy it? And yes, like beer was the Dnipro answer to that question. But how many beer stores can you fit into one block? There is a limit there. 2, maybe fine. 3 is a lot. 4 is too much. 5 basically kills all of their economy because none of them is profitable anymore, and you have to pay the rent and the business model stops working. And some of my friends who were believing in this model, they closed their branches or chains after that. And I think that this is the issue here, because people could basically, like people who live or who walk by that location can just desire another Starbucks, but just cleaner, fresher, with smaller lines. But it's not profitable business anymore. Moreover, they might even not realize what their actual need is. What they're looking for is a library, but it's just not on top of their head, and they will never share this with you.
Right. People would never share this with you, but it's kind of your job, I would say, as an entrepreneur to figure out what they really need. And here I jotted this thing. I think to anyone who is interested in this kind of thing, it would be extremely helpful to explore adjacent, let's say, theory or concept or method, which is called jobs to be done. This is methodology which is super useful. And I think it tries to address what you're saying, like how to figure out what people really need as opposed to what they say or even think they need. But on this beer kind of thingy, I think I don't think it is an example of custom development, because if folks followed this process, they would go through validation of hypothesis there, and they would catch early on that the total addressable market there is limited. It's not infinite, and it cannot grow, right? There are certain number of people living in a particular area, and maybe occasional kind of guests who might use that point, but that's it. It's not growing. It cannot grow. And B, that I think the avalanche of those services that were opened were downstream of someone offering, like, we sell you the entire brewery kind of thing for some amount of time. It only takes one room for you to install it, and you can do wonderful stuff with it. When you see something like that happening, it means that you are not the smartest guy in the room. There would be other people who would buy this stuff probably with the same idea. And if you put 2 and 2 together, like limited total addressable market and circumstances that called for multiple competitors to enter the market, you would figure out, yeah, that's something smelly. And there are steps in the customer development process that should have helped you to catch that. I would say that, yeah, probably folks didn't follow fully this kind of thing.
Yeah, but as they were doing these steps, they would probably search for a specific target audience. They would interview people who are part of this beer culture, and they would not interview their wives, their kids, and all other people who live in those residential blocks. And it's just kind of hard because it's a very broad audience and lots of very different people with different portraits. This is the issue, if you're familiar with this concept of ICP, ideal client or customer profile, when you want to build for different services, for a library, for a beer point, for a photo printing office, there are very different ICPs who live in the same apartment building. And if you happen to interview 20 people who are from a specific niche or target market, they will give you some answers. And then you interview 20 more, they give you more answers. And if you are not actually checking an assumption, you may just get lost in the huge volume of very different needs. And as I mentioned with Mike and Gray, like, yes, these are 10,000 ways we take notes. Live with that. Good luck.
Yes, I think, but yeah, to me that when people sort of make mistakes, and we all have this benefit of hindsight looking at businesses that fail, we can criticize them all day long and say like, no, you didn't follow this particular step in the process, and if you did, the story would have been different. I think that you could do that. And one of the, if I were to nominate the second thing that one should take away from this book, in addition to this product market fit and kind of fluidity of the situation that we are trying to resolve, the other thing would be the idea of reality check, especially on the earlier stages on customer discovery and customer validation. It explicitly talks about hypotheses and validating them. I think this is something that all of us often make mistakes in a sense that we believe too much in our internal understanding or perception of the world, where we interpret what we see and hear in the way that's favorable to our beliefs, as opposed to trying to figure out what that stuff really means. It's like you go around the neighborhood and you see people with beer bottles, and then you think that would be so great if we had a beer point in the vicinity so that all of those people could stop buying beer from the grocery stores and buy fresh beer from our thingy here. It would be great. And we start seeing signs, like the confirmation bias kicks in and stuff like that. But the reality check is really important. Like how do you check if people would really buy? That's a very common notion among startups, that when you ask people, would you do XYZ, and they say yes, it means nothing. Like, would you use this product XYZ? Yes, they would tell you yes because they want to be nice to you. But what you should really ask them, like, can you give me $10 for a month of using the service? And everyone starts, well, maybe not everyone and not for every service, but they start backpedaling and saying, no, well, I would use it, but if it were free and stuff like that. And that's not what you need for your business. And this whole idea of formulating hypotheses and taking tangible, real steps to validate them would be the second idea that people would need to take away from this book. It may be not as explicit in the book, but it's still, nonetheless, it's still there.
I totally agree with short iterations. I totally agree with reality check. I think that there is an answer to how to check that. It's the mom's test. If you remember, I think we discussed it some time ago, the way you talk to people about their behaviors and the way they, find recipes rather than would they buy an app, cooking app. You discover habits. But then it kind of brings me back to my first introduction to this topic. Savvy is experiencing the change of our customers. We mostly work with Ukrainian-based companies, and even if their employees are not currently in Ukraine, they're working with Ukrainians or they're deeply connected to what's happening in Ukraine. And L&D market has been changing towards entertainment. Like IT has always been more on edutainment side of education, not pure academic learning with metrics or something. But right now, most of the requests that we see on the market is like, can you play a game with us? Can you just do something fun? Can we speak about strategic thinking in a fun way? Like, we don't want to study or learn or do something difficult because there are conflicts, because we are tired and exhausted, because reasons. And what people need is not this. They actually need strategic thinking. They need better management. They need new skills. They need to learn to adapt to the new environment. They need to change the way they think about stuff. And what they want is something fun and something light and something easy. And
They want
these
to feel
things,
good
they just
about
don't
themselves.
connect. Like, no, there is no fun business game that will make you strategic thinkers. Yes, there are some games that involve strategic thinking in them, but usually you don't take lessons from them and apply into your next business meeting. Like, it's not the way it works. And if you're trying to fulfill some of the needs by their own means, and it's like a huge trend. Like, I observe it in different chats and communities, L&D community, People First Club. Like, people are looking for fun and games and entertainment. And these people are responsible for education and development mindset and growing competence and talent development and all these important kind of things. But they see that people are not buying what they sell. And they just go with the flow. Like, all right, so what would you buy? Like, we would buy something fun. Let's have a simulation game with lots of teams and something going on and maybe learn something in the process, which I think is a really wrong way to do that. And in this case, there is, like, if you check it with reality, and if, for example, Savvy starts making business games, boy, we will sell hundreds, like in the next few weeks. There is huge demand for that. But it's temporary one, and it doesn't cover the needs of our customers. Like, they will not get what they really need or what they expect they could get from this kind of activity. Yes, they will buy it. It's a very temporary thing that will last for another half a year. And then the true needs will actually come up. Like, they will have to face the reality and move towards their actual thing. And I think that in this specific regard, we can learn our customers super deep. Like, we can talk to them and they will tell us we need entertainment. But no, yes, you don't. Yes, you need some fun and leisure and things, but please don't bring them to L&D.
That's an interesting thing. I'm trying to put a structure around that and several points, maybe. I think if on one hand, if customers want something, who we are to tell them that they want something else. So yes, if we look from pure return on investment kind of perspective, that might be what we would want to do, right? If from the point of view of a dispassionate outsider and investor in the venture, what they are interested, they are not investing into a company because they want L&D to flourish or people to become better version of themselves. Not necessarily. They are investing to get return on their investment, and whatever maximizes that return would be a good thing from that point of view. That's one element that's there. Then another element might be that you as an entrepreneur, you don't want to go into that kind of market. You want to operate in a different kind of market. And I think I'm not sure if you got to this part of the book, but then another thing that I thought was very useful and helpful there is when you start something, it is useful to understand which kind of market you are entering. Like, are you entering the existing market with the new product for a new market, or you try to resegment existing market, entering at the low end, like with the low cost product, which could be like that classical low end disruption story, or you create a niche product where you sell something to a few select customers, but for high profit margin. I think this thing is helpful kind of having a mental model of what you are entering here. And in what you describe, it could be that what you are looking for to do is there is an existing market of edutainment and feel good kind of thing for folks. You don't want to operate in that market. You don't want to bring the product to that market. And you may be looking at bringing a new product for a new market, but then to build that new market requires additional steps. Even the book says it requires patience, maybe waiting for the right time, or kind of building stuff gradually until the idea catches up, and so on and so forth.
I think one of the interesting parts about Savvy is that we work a lot with illusions. People have illusions about impact of some things.
Mm-hmm.
On the example of corporate English, like most people who would order language classes from us,
Mm-hmm.
they expect people to get nice, polite, and cross-cultural competent after attending an English class. Which, no, that's not how it works. Yes, there is a little piece of cross-cultural context that they will get through the language lessons, but that's not how you improve your cross-cultural communication skills. Like, you actually have to focus on cross-cultural communication skills. Or for years right now, the most popular request from our incoming customers is a webinar on feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Like, firstly, a webinar. Like, guys, it's 2024. Like, haven't we learned that it doesn't really change the behavior of people and they don't do stuff from webinars? Maybe a workshop could do something, or maybe something more interactive, but never mind. And then feedback. Feedback seems to be like the universal illusion that if only we learn how to provide feedback, then all our processes will improve. Like, our performance management will fly, all the things will go smoothly, we will resolve all the conflicts, and all the things will just be totally right. People are looking for silver bullets in shape of an English class, in shape of webinar on feedback, in shape of a coffee cup, or something else. These are the substitutions. And usually they happen because people are not invested into finding the real solutions. They just want something fast, understandable, and clear, and just please go and do that. Then fingers crossed, and then very surprised it doesn't work. They keep suffering for another year and then do it over and over and over until somebody actually consults them and tells them, guys, we should probably start with asking why this is happening. Can these people be polite in their native language? No, they can't. Like, they're just rude. Do you think language classes is the best thing to fix that?
I think that's a little bit of a dilemma for entrepreneur like you, where you have your vision and values and aspiration to bring something to the community, to the country, to the industry, and do the right thing. And then everything else tells you that no, everyone's just interested in feeling good about themselves that they completed whatever course or webinar. And if you can give them a little nicely framed certificate for completing webinar, they would be on the seventh cloud about that, and they would put that on the wall and go about their day. I think I don't know the answer to that. There is this dilemma, but I think what I would stick to is, so much about this market or this industry or these dynamics. And if you kind of leave behind all of the preconceived notions of what you can do and stuff like that, well, maybe not entirely, but still kind of leave behind all presuppositions and try to enter the room with clean mind, like knowing everything that you know about thing, what is the best thing you could be doing, both from maybe kind of profit point of view and the longer term mission that you want to achieve. And maybe see, like, it is a strength of yours that you understand these dynamics that you are sharing, like what, and sort of you are uniquely positioned to make use of that. Like, what's the best way to make use of that? And maybe offering an edutainment quests for strategy thinkers or something for half a year might not be that bad of an idea, because it can give you some funds to pursue the next stage or something bigger and greater. Not too dissimilar that what like SpaceX is doing. Like they want to bring people to Mars, and what they're doing now, they're trying to kind of fare cargo to the orbit or to ISS and stuff like that. That gives them funds to continue development of the Mars missions and stuff like that. And so you can take similar approach, but I think I would cling to that strength of yours that you articulated.
But on the example of Musk's Mars and SpaceX thing, I agree that some activities that go side by side with your main flow can be complementary, but sometimes you start doing just random stuff that brings money. Yes, you can use this money for something else, but it's just maybe even opposing to the mission. Like you basically can be investing into cryptocurrencies or something that is just momentarily profitable but doesn't align with your values, your mission statement, and the other things. And it basically creates an internal conflict. Like, what's next? How do you make the next decision? If there is a way to make money from your customers but not solve their problems, or solve their true problems and not get that much money. Like, the final example, and we will be rounding up, is with strategic sessions. Like, whenever people order a strategic session, they have hundreds of scenarios in their mind how it's going to go, and it should, like a silver bullet, synchronize everyone, provide better vision, clear vector, understanding of the environment, build a vision, synchronize the values, get team on board, resolve the conflicts, and do everything. And please do it in 6 hours. Like, all right, what's the chance that people will get into this experience, not get what they need, keep suffering, and on top of that say that strategic sessions don't work?
Chances are high, of course. But then with understanding all of that, I can, if we reformulate the question, what is, like, people want to spend 6 hours doing this, thinking it will be solved, but you understand that no, it's not going to solve that for reasons XYZ. With all of that, what's the best way for people to spend those 6 hours that can unlock them understanding of kind of the bigger thing, like see the not only the tip of the iceberg, but hopefully the bigger picture, and also unlock new follow-on business for you.
And I think this is where the main controversial thing about the CasDev, and not all CasDev, but some sections of CasDev that focus on making the client happy, basically. And there are some sections of CasDev that focus on fulfilling clients' needs. And these are very different things, because to make the person happy, you should just do what the person wants and hope that ones get happy at the end. In my line of work, we quite often feel people disappointed and disillusioned because they understand that the thing that they want to do is a complicated thing. Like, it requires some effort, some time. You can't do all the strategizing in 6 hours and then live the entire year the way you lived before. Like, that's not how things work in terms of strategic management. Like, you have to invest, you have to prepare, you have to analyze, you have to talk a lot, you have to do stuff to make it happen. And by clarifying the amount of work and the ways it can be done, we quite often discourage people because they expected it to be easy, fun, and done for $500. And it turns out it's $50,000 and a year of work, and it can elevate your business to the next levels. It can do all the things you dreamed about. It's just not the way you expected it. And when people understand that, they are usually disappointed or disillusioned, or just, it's not a pleasant feeling. And I think that it's part of our job to still educate people through this and show them, like, all right, guys, unfortunately, that's the way it is. Let's see what are the first 2-3 steps you could take to benefit. Maybe we should focus, like from the list of 12 goals you had for this strategic session, let's pick one and work for 6 hours on this very one thing that is the most important of all of them. Yes, you would like to get all of them, and maybe you will even get some as the side effects of this achieving this one single thing. But having the focus in terms of learning, a very clear learning goal, in terms of strategy, a very specific task for a strategic session, like an answer to one question: should we go to EU market or not? That's it. Like, let's spend 6 hours finding the answer to this question, not trying to synchronize everything, plan a year, approve the budgets, get the responsible, and resolve all the conflicts within our team. And this focusing is painful, but useful. And I think that that's part of maybe customer creation section of CusDev section. And it is focusing on the needs way more than on the expectations.
That's a good question. I'm trying to find some sort of answer to that. And like the slightly obvious, maybe a little bit trivial thing that comes to mind is understand. One of the first steps in the process is figuring out what kind of market you are entering here. And here, it can be, you could ask yourself, like, what is it that we are doing? Like, are we offering a high-end and therefore niche product for those who really need it and for those who have an understanding of how to use it and how to invest whatever it is, like $50,000 over a course of a year to get to the next level? Is it what we are doing there? And if that's the case, then the rest of the process would align that, okay, so then the customer creation process would be activities that increase number of companies that would be receptive to this kind of product, and so on and so forth. But if you decide that you're doing different thing with a different product for a different market, it can go differently. So it still can work, I think.
Yeah. And I just see very few cases when people get there from the very first stage of CusDev. Like, you should be very lucky to get the right hypothesis from the very beginning, because not having the background and the context, it's really hard to validate what people say and see through some, I don't know, words and desires and emotions and illusions and the other stuff. That's why while reading this, looking through the schemes, listening to the book, and looking through the summaries, I was trying to picture, would I actually survive this entire flow with even a single service that we are going to launch? Or maybe we should do it very selectively. Like, we should pick just, I don't know, 3 steps from customer discovery, 2 steps from customer validation that fit best. Because yes, according to the book, you should do like 15 things, and then it kind of conflicts the philosophy of this startup thing about iterating fast, failing fast, and then learning from your experience and reiterating over and over, facing the reality as fast as you can. Yeah, like, you get the hypothesis, you build an MVP, you check it out, and then you basically circle around.
I think I would probably be somewhat against picking and choosing individual steps, because it does feel that they are designed to work together. And if you skip some things in the beginning, I'm not too convinced that in the end you would get a credible or trustworthy result. I would say that maybe the way the book is structured, and it does indeed focus on profitability and hitting that product market fit, but maybe still it implicitly has this element that if you find product market fit, or you get the data that indicates that product market fit is in a particular area, you still need to check that area against other constraints that you have. Because like, if you blindly follow, and if you start with slightly wrong assumptions or something along those lines, the customer development process can lead you to the idea that for a business that sells $2 bills for $1, that total addressable market is entire population of the earth. But the problem with that kind of business is that it's not feasible, right? To have the business. There are even maybe customer development says that, yeah, this is the thing. The engineering or the production or manufacturing for that kind of enterprise would say, like, no, it doesn't work this way. Like we are hitting constraints that we can not overcome. And this part is largely left out of this book, which also means that the idea is that we see that the product market fit is there, but we don't want to do that. Like we don't feel passionate about doing this kind of business, but we know that the thing that we are passionate about doesn't have market response, and probably we should just close this entire enterprise and do something else. But what I'm trying to say is that this element of pursuing something else other than just profit is left out of the description of the book, but still I think nonetheless it's there. It's just that the authors did not highlight it. And if we see something that people are interested in, those beer kiosks, and we don't want to do that, then we don't have to.
Yeah, totally right. I think that I would summarize my impression from the book and the method as the following. I like the philosophy behind it, the concept that the customer should be the focus of your attention. You should learn as much as you can about your customers' needs, expectations, habits, and center product development around what your customer does and feels right naturally. The way they position the entire customer development model feels bureaucratized to me. And if you remember in the first chapter, he was complaining that this product development model is dead because it's like about nothing. When I look at all these 15 stages of customer discovery, 12 stages of customer validation, 12 stages of customer creation that are actually fixated in a specific order, something rings the bell. Maybe that's also dead. At least I haven't seen a single product created by this. Like I've seen lots of successful products that were luckily getting somewhere and creating amazing experiences and stuff. And I know very, 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 very few people who can even remember all the stages in this model. Not saying that it's impossible. I think just purely intellectually, it could be a nice activity to do. But in business reality, first advisory board, verify the problem, like the 13th stage of your investigation and customer discovery. Just, I don't know, talk to people, see what you can do it, see if it works, improve.
I agree with you on that. The book at times, or a lot of times, seems overly prescriptive with the processes, that like have second, sync, something meeting. Like, oh my God, like it's, which time should this meeting be? Is it 11 a.m. meeting or 3 p.m. meeting or something like that? So this part is too prescriptive, and I agree with you on that. And this also doesn't sit right with me. What I think is helpful overall in the book, that for each chapter in the beginning, there is a section. It is there in each chapter, which goes along the lines of philosophy of customer discovery, philosophy of customer validation, philosophy of that. I think those parts of the chapters are super useful, that they have a lot in them. So maybe if the steps themselves might be too prescriptive, that part would still be useful. And one other recommendation I would have, and I had it for myself after initial chapters of the book, and I think I would share this with the readers as well, that I think the way to read this book would be to ask, like when authors say, like, do something, you ask yourself, like, why is that? Why are they saying that XYZ needs to be done? Like, then figuring out the intent behind this thing, and then asking, like, what does it mean for me? I feel that they don't do this. Philosophy section is useful, but it doesn't go far enough explaining why things are important, so that you understand the principles sort of behind the thing, rather than just song and dance of having this meeting, that meeting, and stuff like that. But overall, I think that ideas and then kind of approaches sound. It might be that it gets overly prescriptive, and maybe that way, not too practical.
I like the philosophical part anyway, and I think it's useful. So I will definitely look into the sections of philosophy of customer discovery and customer creation, etc. I felt as if this episode was kind of business coaching for me. So I thank you for your external output and outlook on things, because I see our market too closely, and sometimes it's important to zoom out and look from the different perspective. And I think I have a suggestion for the next episode. There is an article that suggests a framework about needs analysis. Like, it's basically the way to look into what people want, what they expect as the results, and what's the results of the results that they expect. And there is a very curious model that suggests that you should basically go and ask these why questions and see how this model should work. And it seems to me like a very organic step to this discussion, that if we nailed that the customer should be the focus of your attention, my next question is how to actually find the real needs. And maybe we could dedicate our next episode to that.
Sounds intriguing.
But it's going to be next year.
Hopefully a good year.
It's advertisement, right?
No, it's a wish.
Does Goodyear pay for that wish? No?
No.
They definitely should.
Yeah. So maybe it's like happy year, happy new year, something along those lines.
And Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas.
Well, good weeks.
Good weeks.